Hello, welcome
Hi.
to this edition of PD in a Pocket. I'm really excited to have with me today Lena Hammond from Little Scientists. Hello, Lena, how are you?
Hello. I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. So tell me a bit about your background with, STEM concepts and early education.
Yeah, sure. So my background is in science and in particular in environmental education. I'm a head trainer with Little Scientists now, and I've been working with them for the past 4 years. And my role is to teach both educators and also to train trainers in these STEM concepts and how to facilitate STEM learning in an early learning service or we actually also go through to primary school as well. But I was thinking a little bit about this earlier. I had a experience when I was really little, when I was about 5 or 6, and I went on a bushwalk with my family, and we walked across a little stream. And I was following my parents and my brother across the stream, and I looked down, and as I looked down, I noticed some movement in the water. And I bent down, and it happened to be a tiny little a freshwater tortoise, and I picked it up. I wouldn't do that now, but I picked it up and I popped it in my hand. And even as a 5-year-old, it just sat in the little tiny palm of my hand. It was so small, must have been about the size of a 20-cent piece. And I thought, that kind of experience as a child really stuck with me and really helped influence how I moved into science and environmental education. And, that's one of the reasons I love this area, helping educators find joy in STEM and how to implement STEM with their children, because that early childhood experience is just so formative and can really help form those attitudes that follow you through life.
Tell me, did it survive? Did your parents tell you to put it back?
Oh yes, no, it picked up, said hello, and put it back in the stream, and hopefully it lived a long and happy life.
That's great. So that's one of the reasons why early childhood is such a good time to learn about STEM, because it creates that passion that obviously people like you have. But why else is early education such a good period of a child's life to introduce?
Yeah.
First of all, can you just talk about why STEM? Why is science linked with engineering and maths and things? And then talk about why it's an important period.
Yeah, sure. It's interesting because this word STEM is thrown about left, right, and centre these days, and people have this vague idea of what it is, and they know it's science and technology, engineering, maths, but the term STEM is thrown out there. And I think it's really important to try and tease apart what they are to make more sense for our understanding of how they interact with our daily lives and also for children. So if we think about science, we're really talking about systematically observing the world around us and what that means. We're talking about technology. Well, we're not simply talking about digital technology. We're talking about tools and how tools help us. So it could be simply a fork, and how technology improves and develops over time. When we're talking about engineering, we're talking about using what we've discovered about the natural world around us. So, for example, the forces of physics, and how we can use what we know about the natural world to solve different problems. So, I'll go back to the fork example. Talking about engineering, do we want to eat our soup with a fork? Does it actually solve that problem? Not really, but a soup spoon does. And there are a whole different array of spoons as well. We could investigate what is the best spoon for eating a soup. Is it the ladle? Possibly not. Is it a teaspoon? Also possibly not. So this is a perfect activity as introducing the introduction of how technology and engineering works in an early childhood setting. I can go into that later. But yeah, and mathematics, of course, everyone knows mathematics, but really mathematics is about having a language to discuss the physical properties of the world around us. So I think that's really important. What is STEM? And teasing it apart like that. But also, that first question you said, why is it important in the early years? Well, I'm sure your educators would know that those first 5 years are crucial for development. Our brains are undergoing huge changes, and being able to understand and implement the skills and the processes in science, technology, engineering, and maths, fundamentally at these early years, helps create neural pathways that can be continued to be built upon throughout their life. So I like to think about it and explain it like learning a language. When children are very young, they can learn 2 languages or 3, however many they're exposed to, and they can learn those languages and develop them without an accent. And it's very similar with STEM. If we give children the opportunity to immerse themselves and really massage these skills for science, technology, engineering, math in their everyday, we're creating a fluency in this STEM language, as it were. And it's also really important for creating positive learning dispositions that carry through to primary school and beyond. And I don't think that they're any less important than learning that alphabet or basic math to move into primary.
Sure. It also seems to me like children are just naturally born scientists. Like if the aim of science is to answer why, then that's children's very first question,
Yep.
What is this caterpillar doing here? Why does a caterpillar become a butterfly?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly right. And I think sometimes our education system is very good at stamping that out of children, but really we want to massage and nurture that curiosity. And like I can think about it as a parent, I'm sure that I've done this before, where my children have asked me a question and I've gone, I don't know, shoo. But to throw the question back at the children and say, well, what do you think, and what's your ideas, and what do you know about this already, is so much more empowering to them, and really lets them know that their ideas are important and their questions are important. And yes, they should continue to ask questions and wonder about things around them, because we want them to continue to do that. And we want them to continue that right through to their adult lives. I think that a lot of us take how our brains work for granted, that we're really good problem solvers, but we need to use it. Our brains are just like our muscles, and if we stop using them, then those neural pathways will die off.
Sure. One of the things that is hard for, I think, some family daycare educators is if you're in a centre and you're not good at one thing, you can say to another educator, hey, can you do that? I'm really good at this, you're good at that, and divide it up. But in family daycare educators, they've got to do everything. Now, I'm someone that's grown up thinking I'm crap at STEM stuff. Maths was just like, oh, forget it. Science was something that the nerdy kids did over there while me and the other literature kids read our books. So what do you say to an educator like me that's terrified of STEM concepts?
It's really not uncommon. That's very, very common for me to hear with educators in our workshops. And strangely enough, would you believe it, I also was kind of one of those people in high school as well too. And there's 2 things I want to get across here. I'll start with one on the side, which is, why is it that you love what you do, and why was it that you love literature, and who was teaching you that kind of thing, and what kind of teacher were they? I have a very strong interest in history, and I can think back to my high school history teacher that just exuded Plato and Euripides, and she just provided so much fun and joy to learn that topic. And that's what I remember, whereas my high school math teacher was somewhat dry, to put it kindly. Now, so I think a lot of us had that experience in maths or in science, and really just couldn't get it, and there was not that enthusiasm that was shown by our teachers for us to pick up on. We're social creatures, and if you have a look at really young children, babies in particular, with their caregivers, if a dog comes up barking to them, they look to their caregiver first to say, well, what do I do? What's the situation here? Am I scared or am I okay? So we are social creatures. But for those educators who go, oh no, I can't do maths, I can't do STEM, one of the greatest things I can tell you is that actually you don't need to be a scientist, you don't need to be a mathematician or an engineer or a technologist. You don't have to have the answers, because we're not expecting you to be able to teach the children quantum theory or thermodynamics, and nor would we, I know, but nor would we expect you to understand that either, because at this stage we're actually wanting the children to understand the basic processes and the fundamental skills behind that. And one of the best ways to do that is to flip it and give it back to the children. Like I said, so a child says to you, why is the snail moving over there? Well, what do you think's happening? And, you know, educators don't need to know the answer. And the best way for children to learn in a co-constructed environment is to learn alongside and with the children. So if you think, oh, I don't really know anything about, let's say, I don't know, what's a good activity? So water play. People love to jump into water play. Go, well, I don't know anything too much about that other than let's go outside and have fun. But really, introducing water play, you've got a lot of opportunities to talk about gravity and density, buoyancy and displacement. And, you know, there.
See, I panic when you say those words because, like, I don't know why water runs downhill. I know that it does because I've seen it, but I don't know why.
Yeah, sure.
So
but
how do I get over that fear? You know, like I'm going to say, you know, oh no, what does that mean? I'm going to fail this exam.
Well, that's the great thing. There is no exam and you don't need to know. So, you know, you can be wondering alongside the children going, oh, wait, okay, so we're talking about observation skills here. We're pouring water into a funnel. Where's the water going? Okay, it's coming down here. Now it's splashed onto the floor and an hour later, it doesn't seem to be there anymore. What's happened? It's disappeared. It's evaporated. And, you know, we can try challenging children saying, well, can we make the water flow upwards? Can we try that? And there is no right or wrong. It's simply about what you were doing at the time and making those observations and also wondering with the children. You know, I love when educators come to our hands-on workshops and have those fun little joyful experiences where they find out something. I think I had a group once who'd made a bubble on a table, of quite a big bubble, and were dropping toys into the bubble, expecting the bubble to pop, but the toys didn't, and they burst into laughter. This is such a rich experience for them, but this could be done alongside and with children as well. And it might not, I can't explain to you why in the scientific terms. I could try, but it actually doesn't matter. We can ask the children, what do you think is happening? And I've seen this done before where my daughter, she's a bit older, but she, you know, goes, oh, if I dip it in the bubble liquid, it's already got the liquid on it first, and she can pop it in, and the bubble won't break. So, and I guess that that fear to overcome is partly, you know, it's how you've been conditioned to go, oh my gosh, displacement, what are you talking about? But I encourage people to try and pick up scientific vocabulary and use it when they can, not necessarily to explain, but just to observe, because it's a really rich way of developing language, of course. But at the same time, children come up with some very colourful language themselves, which is another great way to develop language skills. And I'll just give you a really quick example of this. So when my daughter was about 18 or 20 months, we went on a boat ride on a little yacht, and she climbed down into the cabin of the yacht. It was quite warm, and she looked around, she goes, it's like an incubator in here. And my jaw just hit the deck. I was absolutely floored that she'd used this great big word. And not only had she used this word, big word, it was in the right context. She was absolutely right. And it took me a little while to work out how on earth where did that come from? And we'd been reading this book about Manakura, the white kiwi, who was raised in an incubator where it was nice and warm. And so she'd actually translated something that she'd been listening to, that we'd been reading over and over, and put it in the right context, which I found phenomenal. But the point is that when we can try and use our scientific language, what we know of it, in as much of everyday experiences as we can, the more it's able to be absorbed and used as a fluent language for children themselves.
For sure.
Yeah.
So what's the best way of introducing STEM concepts to children?
Yeah. So really our method, our big sign that we hold up is every day. immersing children in STEM concepts every day through your everyday play. It doesn't require you to go and collect expensive STEM equipment or coding equipment or programs. Everything that you're doing currently, whether it's, you know, for example, you're in the kitchen, you're going to bake some cookies today, or you're going to bake some muffins. Well, we've got a tray of 12 cookies and we have 4 children. How many cookies do each children get? And okay, wait, our other family daycare group's going to come and join us. 4 more children are going to come and get. So how many would we get now? And how do you know? And children can play with these ideas about equivalence and partitioning and quantities. And that's a perfectly wonderful mathematical experience that didn't require you to sit down and explain the Pythagoras theorem, for example. And again, so
I think I could do 12 cookies in the 4 children, maybe.
Yeah, it's just, it's introducing the concepts of thinking about it. And it's the same with, you know, we say for a technology, for example, people say, how do I introduce a technology experience? Well, you know, let's look at the wheel, for example. You know, it's on so many things. So let's go and find where are all the wheels in our service? Where can we find a wheel? And so we go and have a look on our trikes and our bikes and our scooters, and we might even find them as part of a set of, you know, sets in the building block area, or potentially even within pulleys. And you might question, is the wheel a pulley or is it something else? And you know, what is can we have a square wheel? Will that work? Can we have a triangle wheel? Will that work? And you know, asking children to, okay, so that would be a technology experience. An everyday experience in engineering, for example, would be to pose a problem for the children that they need to solve. So, you know, like milk jugs, how they're just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And you try and pour a big 3-litre milk jug and milk spills everywhere and you've wasted your milk. So how can we better pour the milk? Can we have a smaller jug? Can we make a long handle? Is there a better way to catch the milk so it can be transferred into the bowl in a better way? And what's another experience I can tell you? Something coming up recently, a lot of people are starting to think about spring and planting gardens. And again, you know, we talk about, I think often educators do talk about the food that we eat and how we grow the food that we eat. So you can expand this a little bit more and say, well, you know, what is it that plants need to grow? Well, they need water and they need food and they need sunlight. But maybe you can also introduce some scientific experimentation here and say, well, let's plant one here and feed it milk. And we'll plant one and we'll feed that water, and we'll plant another one and we won't give it anything. And let's see which one grows the best. So you're starting to sort of design experiments. You can ask children to hypothesize which will grow the best. And also just watch that over time and document what's happening with those plants. Documentation is a really important part of science. And it's actually really helpful in programming as well, because your children are doing the documentation for their own learning, which is twofold. One, it's teaching them that documentation skill in science, and it's also giving you your resources to add to what they've learned today in your own documentation. What else?
I think they're all wonderful examples. What about if educators wanted to learn more about how to introduce STEM? Like, what does your organisation offer Little Scientists?
Yeah, so we have a whole host of hands-on workshops. Each of our workshops are based on a scientific concept, for example, water or optics or acoustics, but they also offer at the same time a pedagogical concept as well, such as language development or philosophical inquiry with children. So one of the great things I love about STEM in particular in early childhood is it does overlap very nicely with these pedagogical concepts as well. Our hands-on workshops run for full days, and educators can come in and really try from a child's perspective and also their own perspective, which really it helps to overcome that fear of, I don't know what I'm doing and I can't do that, because you just give it a try and you see what other people's learning dispositions are like. You know, are you somebody that stands back and watches what other people are doing? Do you dive right in and give it a go? So there's multiple opportunities, of course, in those workshops as well to share your knowledge with other educators and come away with lots of practical ideas and lots of resources. So those workshops are held around the country, all through New South Wales, when COVID is not, in our midst. That's right. But it seems like we're easing out of it. So I'd like to think that a lot of our face-to-face workshops will be back soon.
And there's also resources on your website.
Yes. So in the meantime, so whilst the hands-on workshops are on pause in some places, we do have introductory online workshops. We have our Inspire STEM workshops, which are a 2 or a 3-part series, and they cover different topics, but they also just introduce this concept of finding the STEM in the everyday and being able to implement that. We also have STEM Hour, which is a 1-hour webinar interview style where Heike, who's our training manager, interviews big scientists in different areas to see what relevance they have in early childhood and to draw concepts across from the broader community into early childhood. And there's also plenty of resources, like you said. So we have a whole list of books, literature links. So a lot of what we talk about saying we can bring the STEM out in the everyday. One springboard is often literature and books. There's so many wonderful books out there. If you think about maybe like Mr. Archimedes' Bath or Who Sank the Boat, they're great springboards to take that into the water play and start talking about all those things like density and buoyancy and displacement. So there's those on the website, and there's also plenty of hands-on activities.
And the web address for those that want it is littlescientists.org.au. I encourage you all to go and have a look at that. Can we just finish with, I know that you have contact with some family daycare educators. Tell us about some of the great things that you've seen family daycare educators do in the STEM area.
Yeah, sure. So we've had some really interesting projects come through from family daycare. I came across a group that were grinding what do you call it? Different seeds, not seeds.
Spices.
Not like wheat and oats.
Right. Grains.
Thank you, but they probably are seeds, but grains. Yeah, grinding different grains. How can you grind different grains and what textures come out of them? And it was just this exploration into, is a coffee grinder going to make things more fine than a mortar and pestle? Can we chop them? Can we, bash them with rocks? And there's not necessarily any grand outcome, but it was the process and the questioning that the children went into to get to that. Another experience is looking at different birds and how could we tell the boys from the girls when we're looking at a whole group of cockatoos on the ground. And they took this question and it was a single question: how can we tell the boys from the girls? And ended up following through with a diverse exploration into what is a bird? How can we tell what a bird is? What kind of beaks do they have? What kind of wings do they have? What kind of feet do they have? And they probably could tell me much more about cockatoos than I could possibly know myself now, which is really wonderful. And I also came across this wonderful group that had a snail home. And they created this snail home in the backyard, and snails kept escaping. So for the first part of their project was trying to figure out how to make the snails not escape. And then they had a conversation about why the snails wanted to escape, and then decided that rather than trying to lock them in, they actually needed to create happy homes for the snails in different areas of the garden so they could visit them. So they'd gone from this, let's go and collect all the snails and we'll just have them all here in our home, and then actually understanding what kind of habitat a snail needs, and being able to encourage them to the garden rather than trap them in a little box.
They're wonderful examples, and I like them particularly because I can do those kind of things even without my knowledge of STEM.
Well, that's right. You don't need to know about the answers. But you can ask the questions, and you can wonder along with the children. And in fact, I love the word wonder. One of our educators, actually a few of them, keep a book or a wall of wonderings, because like you said at the beginning, children have so many questions, and it's so wonderful to continue to nurture those questions and just bring them out and see where they take you.
And that's a wonderful place to finish. So thank you very much for joining us, Lena. I really appreciate you giving us your expertise.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.